I died on a Tuesday. The funeral was on a Saturday, and my sister Melissa wore my favorite hoodie to it, the oversized gray one with the faded university logo that I'd lived in for 3 years. She paired it with designer jeans and her signature smirk, accepting condolences from distant relatives who didn't know any better. Mom stood beside her, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue, playing the grieving mother for an audience that would never know the truth. I watched it all from my hospital bed, 20 years in the past, in the body of my 12-year-old self. The memories hit me like a tsunami the moment I opened my eyes, two lifetimes crashing together in my preteen brain. I remembered dying at 32, alone in a shitty apartment I could barely afford, my body giving out from years of stress and untreated health conditions I'd ignored because I was too busy sending money home to a family that never loved me. I remembered Melissa's last text, received 3 hours before my heart finally quit. Mom says you're being dramatic about the chest pains. Stop trying to get attention. I also remembered every single day of the 20 years that led to that moment. Now, lying in my childhood bedroom with its peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture, I had a choice. I could live it all again, the neglect, the manipulation, the systematic destruction of my self-worth, or I could do something different. I chose different. The hoodie wasn't even the worst of it, not by a long shot. But it was emblematic of everything wrong with my family, a perfect symbol of how they'd treated me my entire life. Let me explain. I got that hoodie when I was 15 in my first life. Dad had taken Melissa on a tour of prestigious universities, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, spending thousands on travel and hotels, buying her armfuls of merchandise from every campus store. I wasn't invited on the trip. I never was. Instead, I was left home alone for a week with $40 for food, which I stretched by eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. When they returned, Melissa burst into my room without knocking, she never knocked, and threw a wadded-up hoodie at my face. "Dad felt bad about leaving you behind," she said, though her tone suggested she thought he was being ridiculous. "So he got you this from some random state school we passed on the highway. We didn't even stop. He bought it at a gas station that sold their stuff." The hoodie became my favorite piece of clothing, not because of where it came from, but because it was soft and warm and mine. In a house where nothing was truly mine, where Melissa regularly raided my closet and Mom gave away my possessions without asking, that hoodie was sanctuary. I wore it while studying for the SATs that I'd take with no prep courses, unlike Melissa's $5,000 tutoring package. I wore it during late-night shifts at the diner where I worked to save for community college since my parents made it clear they wouldn't pay for my education. I wore it when I was sick and no one bothered to check on me, wrapping myself in its familiar comfort. Melissa coveted it immediately. She tried taking it dozens of times, but I was vigilant. I hid it, I kept it in my locked drawer, I even slept in it sometimes to keep it safe. It drove her crazy that there was one thing I had that she wanted but couldn't take. Until the end. After I died, apparently, it became hers. She wore it everywhere according to my fragmented memories of that in-between state before rebirth. She wore it in Instagram posts, captioning them with things like wearing my sister's favorite hoodie in her memory and racking up sympathy likes. She wore it to my funeral. She wore it until it fell apart, and then she probably threw it away without a second thought. But that was a future that was no longer certain. At 12 years old, with 20 years of memories and the knowledge of exactly how everything would play out, I had one mission: get out. Not just physically leave, though that was part of it. I needed to extract myself completely from the toxic ecosystem of my family before they could sink their claws in deep, before I wasted another 20 years trying to earn love that would never come. The first few days after my rebirth were disorienting. I had to relearn how to inhabit my younger body, how to modulate my voice to sound like a child when I felt like a tired 32-year-old woman trapped in a too small form. But the disorientation was nothing compared to the clarity. I saw everything with new eyes. I saw how Mom's face would light up when Melissa entered a room and remained carefully neutral when I did. I saw how Dad would ask Melissa about her day with genuine interest and give me distracted one-word responses. I saw how Melissa would break my things and face no consequences, how I was expected to share everything while her belongings were sacred. I also saw the financial abuse that I'd been too young to understand the first time around. My maternal grandmother, Mom's mother, had left me a trust fund. $250,000 to be exact, meant for my education and set to be released to me at 18. I'd never seen a penny of it in my first life. Mom had been named trustee, and she and Dad had systematically drained it, using it to fund Melissa's private school tuition, her ski trips, her shopping sprees. By the time I turned 18, there was less than $3,000 left, which they presented to me like it was a generous gift. I'd been too beaten down by then to fight. I'd accepted their explanation that the trust hadn't been as much as Grandma thought and that they'd had to use some for family emergencies. I only found out the truth years later, in my late 20s, when I finally requested the trust documents during a moment of suspicion. By then, the statute of limitations had passed. I couldn't recover the money, and my family denied any wrongdoing. But now I was 12 and the trust was intact and I had time. I spent my first week back observing and planning. I went to school, I came home. I did my homework at the kitchen table while Mom fussed over Melissa's science project, doing most of it for her. I accepted that I was invisible because being invisible meant being underestimated. Melissa was 14 in the full throes of teenage cruelty. She'd always been vicious, but I'd forgotten how bad it was at this age. She mocked my clothes, my hair, my face. She told me daily that I was lucky to be part of such a good family since I was clearly too stupid and ugly to make it on my own. She stole my lunch money, and when I complained to Mom, I was told to share with your sister. Dad was rarely home. He worked long hours, or so he claimed. Later, in my first life, I'd discover he had a girlfriend in the city, a relationship that lasted years before Mom finally found out, and they divorced in a spectacular explosion of mutual accusations. But that was future knowledge. Present-day Dad was just an absent figure who signed off on whatever Mom decided. I needed allies, and I needed resources. My plan started with a phone call. Grandpa Robert was Dad's father, and he'd always been kind to me in a distant way. In my first life, we'd fallen out of touch after I turned 16. I could never remember why exactly, just a gradual fade that ended with me not even knowing he'd died until after his funeral. But in this timeline, he was alive and well, and I remembered something crucial. Grandpa Robert had hated how Dad treated me. He'd expressed concerns that I'd been too young to understand, mentions of checking in on me that Dad had deflected. I called him from the school payphone during lunch using quarters I'd saved. "Grandpa, it's me." His voice brightened immediately. "Well, hello, sweetheart. This is a surprise. How are you?" I'd planned this conversation carefully. I couldn't reveal too much, couldn't sound too mature or too knowledgeable. But I could plant seeds. "I'm okay," I said, letting my voice waver just slightly. I miss talking to you. We haven't seen you in a while." "I know, honey. Your father keeps saying he'll bring you girls up for a visit, but it never seems to happen." There was frustration in his tone. "How's school?" "It's good. I'm getting all A's." That was true. With 20 years of additional life experience, middle school was absurdly easy. "But Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Grandma left me some money, right? For college?" There was a pause. "Yes, she did. A trust fund. Your mother is managing it." "Oh." I let the silence stretch. "Okay, I just wondered if it was real or if I'd imagined it." "Mom and Dad never talk about it." Another pause, longer this time. "They should be talking to you about it. It's your money, your future. Would you like me to speak with them?" "No," I said quickly. I don't want to cause trouble. I was just curious." But the seed was planted. Grandpa Robert was a retired accountant, meticulous and principled. I remembered, that he'd offered to review the trust management within the month. In my first life, Dad had put him off until Grandpa forgot about it. This time, I'd make sure that didn't happen. Phase 1. Secure my financial future. The next call I made was harder, but necessary. There was a lawyer in town, Margaret Chen, who did pro bono work for kids in bad situations. I'd met her in my first life when I was 17 after a particularly bad fight with Mom left me with bruises I couldn't hide. Margaret had given me her card, told me I could call any time. I'd been too scared to follow through, too convinced that I deserved the treatment I received. Not this time. I couldn't go to her directly. I was too young, and my situation, while emotionally abusive, wasn't the kind of immediate physical danger that would warrant intervention, but I could prepare. I started documenting everything. I bought a cheap notebook with my allowance. Melissa got $50 a week. I got $10 and began recording incidents. The date and time Melissa destroyed my science project, forcing me to redo it the night before it was due. The evening Mom forgot to make dinner for me because she was too busy taking Melissa shopping. The morning Dad told me I couldn't do the school trip to the Science Museum because it was too expensive, while simultaneously booking Melissa's spring break vacation to Cancun. I was 12 years old and I was building a case for my own emancipation. It sounds extreme, I know. Most 12-year-olds don't plan their escape from their family. But I wasn't most 12-year-olds. I was a woman who'd lived an entire life of disappointment and pain, who'd died alone and unloved, and who'd been given an impossible gift, a second chance. I wasn't going to waste it. The hoodie thing, the real hoodie thing, happened when I was 15, 3 years into my second life. Those 3 years had been spent in careful preparation. I'd maintained my grades meticulously, securing a 4.0 GPA that would look excellent on scholarship applications. I'd joined every free extracurricular I could find, building a resume. I'd worked part-time jobs that I could reach by bike or bus, saving every penny in an account Mom didn't know about, opened with Grandpa Robert's help after he became alarmed by my mature financial awareness. The trust fund situation had exploded spectacularly when I was 13. Grandpa Robert, persistent despite Dad's deflections, had finally demanded to see the trust statements. What he found was damning. Over $100,000 already spent on expenses that were clearly not mine. Private school tuition for Melissa. A family vacation to Europe that I hadn't been invited on. I'd been sent to a bargain summer camp instead. A car for Melissa's 16th birthday, purchased 6 months early. The legal battle was ugly. Mom and Dad claimed the trust. Language was vague about what constituted family educational expenses, that they genuinely believed they could use it for Melissa too, since we were sisters. Their lawyer argued that the money had been spent on household expenses that benefited everyone. Grandpa Robert hired a pit bull of a lawyer who tore those arguments apart. In the end, my parents were ordered to repay the spent amount with interest and were removed as trustees. The court appointed an independent trustee, and Grandpa Robert was granted oversight. I wouldn't get access to the money until 18, but it was safe now, protected. The case made me a pariah at home. Mom stopped speaking to me except when necessary. Dad called me ungrateful, accused me of trying to destroy the family. Melissa was the worst. She blamed me for every material thing she lost when the money train stopped. No more designer clothes, no more expensive vacations, no more blank check for whatever she wanted. She made it her mission to make my life hell. The hoodie arrived that summer. Dad had taken Melissa on her college tours, paid for with money they'd had to borrow, much to their resentment. I stayed home, as always. I'd spent the week working double shifts at the ice cream parlor, saving money for my own future. When they returned, the scene played out almost exactly as I remembered from my first life. Melissa threw the wadded-up hoodie at me. Same gas station origin story, same dismissive tone. But this time, I was prepared. "Thanks," I said simply, catching it. I examined the hoodie. It really was soft and well-made despite its humble origins. The university logo was from a decent state school, the kind of place I might actually attend on scholarship. Melissa sneered. "Don't get too attached. It's not like you have much else." In my first life, I'd clutched that hoodie like a security blanket, which only made Melissa want it more. This time, I barely wore it. I kept it clean and folded in my drawer, occasionally pulling it out for a lazy Sunday around the house, but I didn't treat it like treasure. I didn't give it the emotional significance that would make it a target. But Melissa still wanted it, because that's who she was. She wanted anything that was mine on principle. I caught her in my room multiple times, going through my drawers. I said nothing. I just watched, remembered, and planned. The turning point came in October of my sophomore year. I'd taken the PSAT and scored exceptionally well, 99th percentile across the board. The scores meant I was a National Merit Scholarship finalist, a designation that would make me extremely attractive to universities. Full rides would be possible. Elite schools would take notice. Mom tried to hide the notification letter from me. I found it in the trash, crumpled but readable. That night at dinner, I made my announcement. I'm going to graduate early, I said into the silence. I've already spoken with my guidance counselor. I have enough credits to finish high school by the end of this year if I take some classes over the summer and online. I'll be applying to colleges in the fall. The table went silent. Dad looked up from his phone. Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Melissa laughed. You? College? Who's going to pay for that? Melissa said. Oh, wait, I forgot. You already stole all the family money for yourself. I didn't steal anything, I said calmly. I recovered money that was legally mine, and I won't need it for college. I'm applying for full scholarships. You think you're so smart, Melissa hissed. You think you're better than us. I think I deserve the same opportunities you've had, I replied, meeting her eyes steadily. And I'm going to get them one way or another. Mom found her voice. You're not graduating early. You're only 15. You're too young to leave home. I'll be 16 by the time I start college, yes, I said. And legally, you can't stop me from taking extra classes. I've already enrolled. I had them, and they knew it. I'd outmaneuvered them by working within the system, by being the perfect student who could justifiably accelerate her education. What could they say? That they wanted to keep me around to be Melissa's punching bag? That they needed me home to do chores and provide contrast to their golden child? Dad tried a different tack. Where are you planning to go? Who's going to take care of you? I have options, I said vaguely. I did. Grandpa Robert had already offered to let me stay with him if I got into a college near his home in Connecticut. Several schools I was interested in were in that region, including some Ivy League institutions that were suddenly possible with my scores. The conversation ended badly, with Mom accusing me of tearing the family apart and Melissa storming off to her room. But my path was set. I spent that fall in a blur of applications and essays. I wrote about overcoming adversity, about family challenges, about financial hardship, all true, all carefully worded to sound sympathetic without being too specific. I didn't want pity. I wanted opportunity. The college acceptances started rolling in after Christmas, full rides to 3 different state schools, generous financial aid packages from several private colleges, and then, in late March, the email that changed everything. Yale had accepted me with a full scholarship package that covered tuition, room, board, and even a stipend for personal expenses. Yale, where Melissa had been rejected 2 years ago despite Dad's generous donation to the Alumni Fund. I accepted on the spot. The Hoodie incident happened 3 days later. I came home from my shift at the ice cream parlor to find my room ransacked, drawers pulled open, closet emptied, belongings scattered across the floor. And Melissa was sitting on my bed, wearing my gray hoodie, a pair of scissors in her hand. She'd cut it to pieces. The hoodie lay in strips around her, the university logo severed into unrecognizable chunks of fabric. She looked up at me with a smile that was pure malice. Oops, she said. I guess I got carried away with my art project. I needed fabric scraps, and since you won't be needing this anymore, you're going to Yale after all, so this loser hoodie is beneath you now. I figured you wouldn't mind. In my first life, I would have cried. I would have screamed. I would have given her the emotional reaction she craved, which would have resulted in me being punished for overreacting and making a scene. But this wasn't my first life. I looked at the shredded hoodie, feeling a distant sadness for what it had represented in my previous existence. But it was just a thing, just fabric, not worth my tears. Okay, I said simply. Melissa's smile faltered. Okay, that's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I asked, starting to gather my scattered belongings. It was a hoodie. You destroyed it. I can't undestroy it. So, okay. Her face reddened. You think you're so mature, so above it all. You're not. You're still just the worthless reject that Mom and Dad never wanted it. Maybe, I said, folding a shirt. But I'm the worthless reject going to Yale. Where are you going again? Oh, right, community college because you couldn't get in anywhere else. It was a low blow, but I was done being the bigger person. Melissa had made my life hell for 16 years across 2 lifetimes. She'd earned some truth. She lunged at me, scissors still in hand. I dodged easily. I remembered this from my first life, her physical attacks that everyone dismissed as sisters fighting. But this time, I'd set up my phone to record before engaging with her. "Put the scissors down, Melissa," I said clearly, keeping the phone in frame. "You're threatening me with a weapon." Mom appeared in the doorway. "What's going on?" "Melissa destroyed my property and then came at me with scissors," I said calmly, holding up my phone. "I have it on video. I'm going to file a police report." "You will not," Mom snapped. "Stop being so dramatic. She's your sister." "She's my bully," I corrected. "And I'm done tolerating it. I'm 16 years old. I'm leaving for college in 4 months, and I will not spend another day in a house where I'm abused and my belongings are destroyed without consequence." I pushed past them both and went downstairs. I called Grandpa Robert from the landline. My cell phone was a cheap prepaid with limited minutes, and explained the situation in calm, measured tones. He arrived within 2 hours with a lawyer. By midnight, I was living with Grandpa Robert. Mom and Dad threatened legal action, but they had no ground to stand on. I was 16. I had documented proof of abuse and neglect, and I had a safe relative willing to take me in. The lawyer made it clear that if they pushed, everything would come out. The trust fund theft, Melissa's violence, years of differential treatment. They let me go without much of a fight. I think they were relieved, honestly. I was the thorn in their perfect family narrative, the inconvenient reminder of their failures. I took only what was mine: clothes, books, my laptop, my documents. I left behind anything they'd given me, which wasn't much. And I left behind the shredded remains of the hoodie, scattered on my bedroom floor like the remnants of my old life. The next 4 months passed in a blur of preparation and peace. Living with Grandpa Robert was a revelation. He treated me like a person, not an inconvenience. We had conversations about books and politics and life. He taught me to play chess. He made sure I ate 3 meals a day. He asked about my day and listened to the answers. For the first time in either of my lives, I understood what family was supposed to feel like. I graduated high school in June with valedictorian honors. Mom, Dad, and Melissa didn't attend the ceremony. They sent a card with a $50 check that bounced. Grandpa Robert framed my diploma and took me out for a celebration dinner. In August, he drove me to New Haven to start at Yale. "I'm proud of you," he said, as we unloaded my boxes into my dorm room. "Not just for getting here, but for how you got here. You fought for yourself when no one else would. That takes courage." I hugged him tightly, fighting tears. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," he said simply. My roommate arrived shortly after, a bright, friendly girl from Oregon named Sasha, who immediately started chattering about her excitement for college. She was nice, normal, undamaged by family trauma. I was going to have to learn how to be friends with people like her, people who had loving families and healthy expectations. It would be a challenge, unlearning all my defensive mechanisms. But I was ready. Classes started, and I threw myself into academic life with the focus of someone who'd been given a second chance. I joined study groups, went to professor office hours, participated in seminars. Yale was rigorous and demanding, but after everything I'd been through, intellectual challenge was a gift. I made friends slowly. It was hard to trust people, hard to believe they liked me for myself rather than what I could provide. But gradually, I built a social circle. Sasha remained my closest friend, joined by Marcus, a political science major from Texas, and Jennifer, a pre-med student from California. They knew almost nothing about my family situation, just that I was estranged from my parents. They didn't press for details. Melissa tried to contact me once during my freshman year. She sent a long email explaining that she'd failed out of community college, that Mom and Dad were going through a hard time financially, and that the family needed my help. Specifically, they wanted me to take out student loans to help pay for Melissa's education expenses. I deleted the email without responding. She tried again a few months later, this time claiming that Mom was sick and wanted to see me. I called Grandpa Robert to verify. Mom was fine, just angry that I'd cut them off. I blocked Melissa's email, her phone number, and her social media accounts. My sophomore year, I declared a double major in economics and computer science. The combination positioned me perfectly for the emerging tech industry, and I had plans. Big plans. I spent my summers doing internships at tech companies and financial firms, building my resume and my network. I was invited back to multiple companies, courted for full-time positions after graduation. The money from these internships went straight into savings and investments. I was determined to never be financially vulnerable again. Junior year, I met someone. His name was Daniel, and he was a graduate student in the law school. We met at a campus coffee shop when we both reached for the same book, a biography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that someone had left on a table. Great minds, he said with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. We had coffee, then dinner, then more dinners. Daniel was kind and ambitious and had no patience for bullshit. When I finally told him about my family, months into our relationship, his response was immediate. They don't deserve you, he said firmly. And you don't owe them anything. It was exactly what I needed to hear. We graduated together, me from undergrad, him from law school, and moved to San Francisco. I'd accepted a position at a prestigious tech startup that gave me significant equity. Daniel joined a firm specializing in family law, inspired by my story to help other people escape abusive situations. Life was good, better than good. I was successful, in love, surrounded by people who valued me. I had money in the bank, a beautiful apartment, a career I was passionate about. I was 22 years old, and I'd rebuilt my entire life from the ashes of the old one. Then when I was 25, my startup got acquired by a tech giant for an obscene amount of money. My equity package was worth $15 million. I paid off Grandpa Robert's mortgage as a thank you gift. I donated $1 million to scholarship funds for students from abusive homes. I invested the rest conservatively, ensuring I'd never have to worry about money again. The success made tech blogs and business magazines. My name was out there, attached to a number that was hard to ignore. It took less than a week for my family to find me. Mom called first. Honey, I saw the news about your company. I'm so proud of you. Honey, she called me honey. She'd never used an endearment for me in either of my lives. What do you want? I asked flatly. Want? I'm your mother. I just wanted to congratulate you and, well, we've all missed you so much. Your father especially. He talks about you all the time, how much he regrets that we lost touch. Lost touch. As if I'd simply wandered off instead of fleeing an abusive household. I'm going to stop you right there, I said. I know why you're calling. The answer is no. No to what? I just wanted to reconnect with my daughter. No to whatever you're going to ask for. Money? Probably. Maybe you want me to help Melissa or pay off your debts or invest in some scheme? No to all of it. Mom's voice cooled. You've become very hard. That's what happens when you turn your back on family. I didn't turn my back on family. I escaped abuse. There's a difference. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. You owe us. I owe you nothing, I interrupted. Grandma left me money for my education, and you stole it. You neglected me emotionally and financially my entire childhood. You allowed Melissa to abuse me without consequences. You tried to sabotage my escape to college. I don't owe you a single thing. After everything we did for you, like what? I asked. Name one thing you did for me that wasn't the bare minimum legal requirement. Silence. That's what I thought, I said. On the sun. Don't call this number again. Don't email me. Don't try to contact me. If you do, I'll get a restraining order. I hung up before she could respond. Dad called next, using a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. His message was shorter, more blunt. Call me back. We need to discuss your responsibilities to this family. I blocked the number. Melissa was the most persistent. She called from multiple numbers, sent emails from different accounts, even showed up at my office building once. Security escorted her out when she tried to force her way past reception. The email she sent that night was unhinged. You selfish bitch. You have millions of dollars while I'm struggling to pay rent. We're family. You're supposed to help me. Mom and Dad are broke because of what you did taking them to court over that stupid trust fund. Grandma would be ashamed of you. You owe us. You owe us. I'm going to sue you for my share of your money. I'm going to tell everyone what a terrible person you are. You're going to regret cutting us off." I forwarded the email to Daniel, who'd just made partner at his firm. "Want me to draft a cease and desist?" he asked. "Please." The letter went out the next day. It detailed every attempt at contact, characterized them as harassment, and threatened legal action if they continued. It also included a paragraph noting that any public disparagement of me would be considered defamation and prosecuted accordingly. The contact stopped after that, mostly. I heard through Grandpa Robert, who maintained minimal contact with Dad out of family obligation, that things weren't going well for them. Dad and Mom had divorced, each blaming the other for their financial problems. Mom was living in a small apartment working retail. Dad had a new girlfriend and was trying to rebuild his life, though he was bitter about how his children had abandoned him. Apparently, Melissa rarely spoke to him either. Melissa herself had finally finished a degree at a for-profit online school and was working a series of low-level jobs. She was in debt, struggling, and constantly angry about the perceived injustice of my success. I felt no guilt about their circumstances. They'd made their choices, I'd made mine. Life continued to improve. Daniel proposed when I was 27, and we got married in a small ceremony at a vineyard in Napa. Grandpa Robert walked me down the aisle, beaming with pride. My friends from Yale were there, along with colleagues and Daniel's large, warm family who'd adopted me enthusiastically. No one from my biological family was invited. I didn't even tell them it was happening. I started my own company when I was 28, a platform connecting abuse survivors with resources, legal help, and support networks. It was profitable enough to sustain itself, but I didn't need it to be. I funded it largely out of my own pocket, driven by the desire to help people like me escape situations like mine. Daniel specialized in family law cases, often working pro bono for clients who couldn't afford representation. We were a team, united in the cause of helping people rebuild their lives after trauma. By the time I was 30, I had everything I'd never had in my first life: love, success, financial security, purpose, peace. I owned a beautiful house. I had friends who felt like family. I had a husband who adored me and who I adored in return. I had work that mattered, and I had the satisfaction of knowing I'd saved myself. One afternoon, I was working from home when an envelope arrived via courier. Inside was a wedding invitation. Melissa was getting married. The invitation was elaborate and expensive looking, thick cardstock with gold embossing. It was addressed to the successful sister in handwriting I didn't recognize, probably her fiancé's. I almost threw it away immediately, but something made me open the inner envelope. There was a note inside in Melissa's handwriting. "I know you probably won't come. I know you hate me and you have reasons. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. Therapy has helped me see how horrible I was to you growing up. I'm not asking for forgiveness, and I don't expect you to care about my life. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. You deserved better. I'm ashamed of who I was, and I'm trying to be someone different now. Melissa." I read the note 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden demands. But it seemed genuine, tired, sad. Daniel found me staring at it. "What's that?" "My sister's getting married. She apologized for how she treated me." He read the note over my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to throw it away and never think about her again. But part of me wonders if she really has changed." "You don't owe her anything," Daniel said gently. "Not your forgiveness, not your presence, nothing. But if you're curious, or if you think there might be something there worth salvaging, you can reach out. Just protect yourself first." I thought about it for days. In the end, I sent a response. "Melissa, I received your invitation and your note. I'm not ready for a relationship, and I may never be. But I appreciate the apology. It takes courage to acknowledge our mistakes. I hope your marriage is happy and that you've found peace. I wish you well." It was more than she deserved, probably, but it was also true. I did wish her well, in an abstract way. I wanted everyone to be happy and healthy, even people who'd hurt me. That didn't mean I wanted them in my life. She wrote back. A real letter this time, pages long, detailing her therapy journey, her realizations about how she'd been enabled and how she'd been cruel. She didn't make excuses, didn't ask for anything. She just explained. I wrote back. A shorter letter, but honest. We began corresponding occasionally, carefully. It wasn't a relationship, not really. More like two distant acquaintances who shared a painful history and were both trying to move past it. I never told her about the rebirth, obviously. That secret was mine alone, the impossible knowledge that I carried every day. Sometimes I wondered if it had really happened or if I'd just been a very intuitive child who'd somehow predicted the future. But then I'd remember dying, remember watching my own funeral, and I knew it was real. I'd been given a second chance, and I'd taken it with both hands. Mom and Dad, I never reconciled with. They never genuinely apologized, never took real responsibility. They remained bitter and convinced of their own victimhood until the end. When Dad died of a heart attack at 65, I went to the funeral but didn't speak to anyone. When Mom died 3 years later, I sent flowers but didn't attend. Grandpa Robert lived until he was 92, sharp and engaged, until the very end. I was with him when he passed, holding his hand. "You made it," he whispered. "You got out. You built a life. I'm so proud." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, you could have," he said with a smile, "but I'm glad I could help." He left me everything in his will, though by then I didn't need it financially. I donated most of it to college scholarship funds in his name, keeping only a few personal items, his chess set, some photographs, his wedding ring. Now I'm 32, the age I was when I died in my first life. But this time, I'm not alone in a shitty apartment with a failing heart. I'm in my home office in Palo Alto, looking out at the garden Daniel and I planted together. Our dog is asleep at my feet. Dinner is planned with friends tonight. Tomorrow, I have a board meeting for my nonprofit where we'll discuss expanding our services to 3 new states. I think about the hoodie sometimes, that gray, oversized piece of fabric that represented everything wrong with my family in my first life and became a symbol of Melissa's cruelty in my second. She destroyed it, thinking she was destroying me, not understanding that I'd already moved on, that I'd left her and our parents behind the moment I'd opened my eyes in my 12-year-old body with 20 years of painful knowledge. The hoodie didn't matter. It never really mattered. What mattered was that I'd saved myself. I'd recognized that I couldn't change them, couldn't make Mom love me, couldn't make Dad see me, couldn't make Melissa stop being cruel. All I could do was change my own trajectory, protect my own future, and build my own life. And I did. I'm happy. Genuinely, thoroughly happy. I wake up every morning grateful for this second chance, for the people in my life, for the work I do. I've helped hundreds of people escape abusive situations through my nonprofit. I've built a marriage with a man who sees me and values me. I've created a life that would have seemed impossible to the scared, broken woman who died alone at 32. Sometimes I wonder why I was given this gift. The rebirth, the foreknowledge. Was it magic? Divine intervention? A glitch in the universe? I don't know, and I've stopped trying to figure it out. All I know is that I was given a second chance and I didn't waste it. I didn't wait for my sister to take my favorite hoodie because I'd already packed and left. I'd already saved myself. And in the end, that was the only revenge I needed. Living well, living fully, living free. They could keep their toxicity, their drama, their endless cycle of abuse and enabling. I had something better. I had peace. The end.